Hello everyone, and welcome. I'm Jordan at Afterburner Automation, and today we're going to be walking through the first of two courses on the email package. By the end of this course, you should be able to use the email package to connect and disconnect from an email server, where you'll be able to send, move, and delete emails in bulk, and save any attachments. The email package has two basic types of commands. Those that perform actions on specific individual emails, and those that perform actions on groups of emails. We'll be going over the types that perform actions on groups of emails in this course because the ones that work on individual emails require some concepts that we haven't learned yet. For more on those commands, check out the Junior Developer Learning track. As you might have guessed, for these commands to work, we'll need an email server to connect to. In order to teach these concepts in the same way to everyone taking this course, we'll be walking through creating a Microsoft Outlook account on our machines. But if you already have an Outlook account, you'll be able to use that instead. A360 has built-in functionality that specifically uses Outlook, but it can also be used with just about any other email server like Gmail, Yahoo Mail, Proton Mail, or even custom enterprise servers. Where it applies, I'll be sure to mention any helpful tips so that you'll be able to use these other servers as well, but the setup tips for Outlook will apply pretty evenly to any other server. Let's get started. For this course, we're going to pretend that we work for the finance department of a very large corporation. At the end of each month, we receive reconciliation reports attached to emails from the various other departments that need to be downloaded to our machines. Mixed in with the report emails, we'll receive emails from some departments requesting an extension for their report, and these emails need to be moved from our inbox to the archive folder on our email server. Finally, we need to delete the red emails that had reports attached so that our inbox is clean. So we have three goals for this bot. Download all reconciliation reports from our email inbox, move any extension requests into the archive folder, and then delete the red emails that had reports attached to them. You'll also need the cd20-financereports.zip file that's located in the resources section just below this video player, so go ahead and download that file now. Now that you have that zip file, let's work on getting the data in a place that we can use it. Let's start by opening up File Explorer and navigating to the Downloads folder. This folder is the default location where your zip file was probably downloaded to, but if that file's not here, you either have a different default download location or there was a problem with the download. You may need to investigate on your own to see why that zip file is not in the Downloads folder. If the cd20-financereport.zip file is present, we need to unzip it and store the files in a place where we can easily retrieve them. So let's right-click on the zip file and click Extract All. You should see a window asking where you want to extract these files, but instead of using the default location, let's set our own by clicking Browse. The Select a Destination folder should appear, and in that window, we'll navigate to the desktop and create a new folder. We'll call this one cd20-finance reports. Then, select that folder and click the Select Folder button. When it returns you to the Extract Files window, you should see the full path to that folder. Make sure the Show Extracted Files When Complete box is checked, then click Extract. This should open up a new File Explorer window that's automatically inside of the CD20 folder with a folder called Original Files. If we open that folder, we should see 10 different files, all named report, underscore, and then a number, 1 through 10. Minimize this window, but keep it open because we'll need it later. You can close the Downloads window if you'd like. The other thing that we need for this course is an Outlook email account. If you have one already, you're welcome to use it, but we'll be sending a lot of files to this email address, so it may be best if you set up a free one with me now. To do that, we're going to open up Chrome and go to outlook.live.com. Once the page loads, you should be seeing what I'm seeing right now, and there should be a button labeled Create Free Account. Let's click that now. It'll ask us what we want our email address to be, and you can feel free to give your email address whatever name you like, but make sure you can remember it later. Click Next when you're ready, and that will take you to the Create a Password screen. Go ahead and use whatever password you like, but be sure you can remember it later. I'm also going to uncheck the box that allows Microsoft to send me info, tips, and offers, so I don't get any spam. Then, press Next. It will then ask you for your first and last name. Go ahead and enter those here, and press Next when you're done. It will ask you for your country, so go ahead and select that from the drop-down, and once you've done that, enter your birthday as well, and then press Next when you're ready. It may ask you to solve a puzzle so that it knows you're not a robot. Click Next and a visual puzzle should appear for you to solve. Go ahead and solve the puzzle and then press Next. It should ask if you'd like to stay signed in, and then you can click Yes. This will open the web version of your Outlook account. Go ahead and delete any default welcome emails and close this window. Now that we have our files where we need them and our Outlook account is set up, make sure that you log into the control room and navigate to the automation section like we've been doing. Then, navigate to the Citizen Developer folder and create a new subfolder called Email 101. Let's create a new bot within that folder. Since we're dealing with finance reports, let's call it CD20-Finance Reports. Once you're in the RPA workspace, we'll start working on our first task, downloading each of these files from an email inbox. This will be a little weird since we haven't set up the mailbox yet and the emails aren't there yet, but as we work on these email commands, the mailbox setup will get triggered by the commands we're using. Let's head over to the Actions sidebar and scroll down to the Email package. If we want to download attachments from a mailbox, it looks like we have two options: Save all attachments and Save attachments. Save attachments is one of the commands I mentioned earlier that works on individual emails, so we'll be using Save all attachments. But before we drag that over though, it's important to know that every single one of the commands in the email package, with the exception of the Send command, requires us to be connected to the mailbox already. With that in mind, we'll first need to use the Connect command, which is an administrative command that creates a connection between A360 and the target email server, so that we can use other commands with it. Without this command, we can't interact with the server, so let's go ahead and drag it over to the main workspace and take a look at the various options. The first is Session Name, and if you took the Excel Basic 101 course, you'll already understand how this works, but I'll go over it again just in case. The session name identifies the mailbox we've connected to, and any other email commands we use will need to use this same session name. If we needed to work with two mailboxes at once, we would need to give each connect command a separate session name, so that A360 would know which mailbox we wanted to interact with when we use other email package commands. We'll only be interacting with a single mailbox in this bot, so we can leave the session name as email session. Next, we need to decide which type of mailbox we're going to connect to. Each option has its own different connection options, so let's click through them real quick. Starting with Outlook. Obviously, this option is the simplest because it allows you to use the Outlook account that's already set up on your computer. We'll come back to that one, so let's move on to Email Server. This option is the most flexible because it allows us to put the name and port number of the mail server. Most mail servers, including Outlook, Gmail, and others, will work with this option as long as they're configured to allow IMAP or POP3 protocols. For those of you who winced when I said IMAP and POP3, don't worry, you don't necessarily need to know what those mean, but if you're using this command, you'll need to find out if your mail server uses one or the other. Finally, there's the EWS server option. EWS stands for Exchange Web Services, and if you're using this option, you probably already know which versions of Exchange and Azure Cloud you're using, but if not, you can reach out to your IT department, and they should be able to let you know. Once you know the configuration options, you can use the drop-downs to select your various options and then enter your credentials. Anyway, for now, we'll be using the Outlook option, so let's click on that. Like it says below the drop-down, this option defaults to the default Outlook mailbox of the BotRunner Windows account, so you need to be careful if you plan to run this bot on a machine other than your own. The default Outlook mailbox may not be the same as the one on your machine, and in that case, you'll need to use the email server option, but I'll show you how to do that later in the course. For now, the drop-down is grayed out, so let's click the refresh icon to the right. If you already have Outlook configured on your machine, it'll automatically populate that drop-down with some options for you, but otherwise, Outlook will open and start walking you through the process of setting up an account. We'll start by clicking Next, and then it'll ask if we want to set up Outlook to connect to an email account. This option actually links up a current email address to Outlook, which is exactly what we want, so let's click Yes and then click Next. It'll ask for our information here, so we'll start by filling out the Your Name field with our name. Then, we need to fill out the email address field, so let's go ahead and put in the email address that we set up earlier in the course. Finally, we need to enter the password for that account into the two fields below. Once you're done, click Next. The wizard will start configuring the mailbox, and a pop-up will most likely appear asking for the password to your Outlook account again. Go ahead and enter it and press Sign In. After a moment, it'll return you to the Outlook Setup wizard and finish configuring the mailbox. The last thing we'll want to do is uncheck the box in the bottom left for Set up Outlook Mobile on my phone too, and then click Finish. Back in our bot, after a brief delay, it'll finish getting options, and the drop-down will no longer be grayed out. If we click on it, we should see Default Mailbox, as well as our new email address. If you already had Outlook configured, you may have some other options here as well, so you'll need to select the account that you want to use. I'll go ahead and select my new email address here also, but since it's the only one, we could also just leave this blank. Now our email connect command is all set up, but we don't have any emails to look at. For that, we're going to go ahead and write a couple lines of code to send all of those reports and some extension requests. Let's first head over to the Actions sidebar and grab the Email Send command. This command is used to, you guessed it, send email, so let's drag that over into the workspace just above our Email Connect command. Like I mentioned before, this command does not require us to be connected to email already, so we can put this command anywhere and not cause a problem, but we need it ahead of the rest of our bot so that the emails get sent first. The options appear in the right sidebar, and you'll notice that most of the options are similar to what you might see when you write an email in Outlook. We'll start with the To address field, where we'll need to put our new Outlook email address. You'll see underneath that there's a note letting us know that we can send emails to multiple emails as long as we separate them with a comma. In my experience, a semicolon also works, but we're just going to send emails to ourselves for now. There are also CC and BCC options if you'd like to copy or blind copy other recipients. Below that is the subject field, and we'll want to go ahead and fill this out with Finance Report so that we know what the email contains. After that, we have the attachment option, which allows us to attach one or more files to the email. We have two options here, List and Variable. We don't know about variables yet, so let's click List. This allows us to add multiple attachments to this email. Go ahead and click the plus sign to add the first one. Like most commands that allow us to select files, this allows us to choose from control room files, desktop files, or variable files. In this case, we'll be sending desktop files, so let's click that option and then click Browse. When the Select File window appears, we can navigate to the desktop, then to the CD20 folder, and the original files folder stored inside. Here, we can select any of the reports and press Open. It doesn't matter what report file we select because we'll be putting this code into a loop so that we can send all 10 files. But anyway, we'll see the file path appear in the attachment field. And just below, there's a checkbox that says, Raise error if the attachments are missing, desktop only. If this box is checked, then the bot will throw an error if the attachment we gave it is not found or otherwise unavailable. If we don't check it and the attachment's not found, it'll still send the email, but without the attachment. So it's important to think about whether or not you want your bot to fail if the attachment's missing. In this case, we want all 10 report attachments to get sent to the inbox, so let's check that box. The next option is the email body, which is the main message section of the email. We have three separate options here: plain text, HTML design, and HTML code. Plain text is the simplest version but has very limited formatting options. HTML design gives us various options that you might normally see in a text editor like Microsoft Word, such as font, size, bold, italics, etc. And then finally, HTML code allows us to actually write HTML code into the message field and harness the tools that are included within that markup language. Learning HTML code is well outside the scope of these classes, so I won't be going into detail on this, but if you learn HTML or already know it, you can use it with this option. Anyway, the message is not critical for what we're doing, so let's select plain text. In the message field, we have to put something, so I'll just put, "Here is this month's report." Underneath that, there's a checkbox that's already checked, which says Include Go Green message at the end of this email. If we leave this box checked, it'll print a small message at the end of the email that encourages people not to print the email for the sake of the environment. Leave that checked or uncheck it if you like, and then we'll move on to the Send Email Via option. This option is very similar to the Email Connect command. It has options to send the email via email server, Outlook, or EWS server, and the settings are basically the same but with some minor changes that I'll show you later. Let's select Outlook so that this will automatically send the email from the default Outlook mailbox on the machine. When we select that option, we're done with this command, but we still need to loop it 10 times. Let's head over to the Actions sidebar and grab a loop command. We'll drag that right on top of our email send command on line 1. And since it's already set to loop 10 times by default, we can leave it as is. We'll need to know which iteration of the loop we're currently working on though, so let's click the Create Variable icon to the right of the dropdown. Counter works for the name of this variable, so let's click Create and Send. You might remember from earlier courses that in order to use our counter variable, we'll need it in a string type variable. So let's go to the Actions sidebar again and open up the number package. We'll drag a toString command inside of our loop. And then, for the Enter a Number option, we can press F2 and select our counter variable. For the Assign the Output option, we'll click the Create Variable icon and name this new variable CounterString to make it clear what it is. Again, we don't need any decimal places, so we can leave that field as 0. Now, let's drag our email send command inside of the loop and below our number to string command. Within the command itself, we need to change the file name to use our CounterString variable, so let's look at the attachment option. We can scroll over to the file name, then delete the number after the underscore, and press F2. We can then select our CounterString variable from the available options, and we'll be all set. We still need to send some extension request emails as well, so let's copy our loop command and paste it after the email send command on line 3. You'll notice that this copies the loop command and everything inside of it, and also that it puts our new loop command inside of the original loop. Let's drag that new loop command from line 4 slightly to the left and down below where it currently is so that it's not within the original loop anymore. For this loop, let's change the number of times to 5 so that we have fewer extension requests than reports. We won't need the counter variable since we aren't going to be sending files this time, so let's click on the drop-down and select Choose a Variable so that we aren't keeping track of the loop count. That means we can delete the number to string command on line 5. So let's do that now, and then open the email send command just below it. Since we're sending something different this time, let's change the subject to Extension Requested. We can also delete the attachment from the attachment list by clicking the X on the top right of that gray box. Then, we can uncheck the Raise Error if file attachments are missing box. And then finally, let's change up the email body below to read, I am requesting an extension. Now we're ready to send our emails, but first, let's make sure that we don't run our email connect command on line 6. For that, let's go over to the 3 dots on the right side of that command and click on them. This brings up an options menu, and we'll select Disable Action. You'll see that this grays out our command, letting us know that when the bot runs, it won't run this command. Let's click Run and see what happens. The bot shouldn't take too long to run, but it may take a bit for all of the emails to come in, so wait until you have all 15 emails, then we'll come back and take a look. Alright, so now that the bot's done, let's open Outlook on our machine if it's not already opened. Once it loads up, we'll see that we have 15 emails, 10 finance reports, and 5 requested extensions. Let's leave this open for now and get back to our first major task, downloading all of the finance reports. For now, let's select both of our loops by selecting one or the other, then holding Control and clicking on the other one. This should select both loops and all of the commands inside of them. On the right sidebar, we'll see that we have 5 actions selected, and there are a few icons we can choose from. We want to click on the Disable Action icon, which is the icon that looks like a toggle. Then, we need to enable our Email Connect command on line 6. We'll do this by clicking on the 3 dots to the right of that command and selecting Enable Action. We'll leave these commands this way for the rest of the bot, but if you need to resend the emails for some reason, you'll have that code here that can be re-enabled whenever you want. So, we're connecting to the mailbox, but we need to download all attachments. Let's head back to the Actions sidebar and get the Save All Attachments command from the email package. This command is relatively self-explanatory because it will save all attachments in the mailbox, but we do have a little bit of control over which attachments get saved. Let's drag that command into the workspace just below our email connect command, and the options will appear in the right sidebar. The first option is the session name, and we can leave that one as is, since that's what we did with our email connect command. Next, we see that we need to select a type of email to get, either all, read, or unread. In this case, we're going to leave it set to all, but if we were to set it to read or unread, it would only save the attachments from either read or unread emails, depending on our selection. Then, we need to choose a folder to save the attachments to. We should still have File Explorer open to the CD20 folder, but if not, go ahead and navigate there. Like we've been doing in previous courses, we'll click to the right of the CD20 folder name in the address bar at the top to select the full path. Then we can copy that path and paste it back into the Save Attachments to Folder field. Finally, we'll leave the Overwrite Files checkbox checked, so that if we run the bot repeatedly, it won't cause any issues. One thing to note, the Save All Attachments command and many of the other email commands will mark the emails it interacts with as read. This can be important if you're expecting to use the type of email option in a command to interact with only unread emails, so pay attention to the order of operations. In this particular case, we used our Save All Attachments command to save attachments from all emails, so all of the emails in the inbox will be marked as read once that command executes, even if they don't have any attachments. Anyway, now that we've downloaded those reports, we can move on to the next task, moving the requested extension emails into the archive folder. For that, we're going to use the Move All command from the email package. The Move All command is a fairly robust command that lets us move all of the emails that meet certain criteria into a different folder in our inbox. Let's go to the Action sidebar and grab the Move All command, then bring it right after the Save All Attachments command. The first option is session name again, so we can leave that alone. The next option is destination folder path and mailbox, which is where we want to move the emails to. We already know that we want to move it to the archive folder, so let's type archive here. Next, we need to decide which types of emails to move, but for our purposes, we can leave this set to all. It'll then ask us what folder we want to move from. It's already set to inbox, which is what we want, but you can change this to move from the archive folder or any other folder that you have set up in your mailbox. Finally, we have 4 optional fields: when subject contains, from specific senders, when receive date is on or after, and when receive date is before. All 4 of these fields allow us to tell the command to only move emails that meet these criteria. So we could only move emails that were received before a certain date, or that were sent from a certain sender, or any combination of the 4. In this case, we only want to move the emails that have the subject extension requested. So let's type extension requested into the when subject contains field. It's important to note that this is also case sensitive, so just make sure that it matches whatever you had when you sent out those emails originally. In our case, we capitalized that R, so we're going to go ahead and fix that here. That takes care of our second task, so let's finish up with our third task, deleting all of the read emails that had reports attached. For this task, the choice might seem obvious. Within the email package, there's a command called delete all. The one thing you need to know about this command is that it permanently deletes any email that it deletes. It won't store them in your deleted items folder or trash folder, so be careful if you use this command. You won't be able to get your emails back after it runs. Let's go to the Actions sidebar, find the delete all command in the email package, and drag it below the rest of our code. This command is super simple, with only the session name and type of email to delete as options. We could leave the session name the same and set the type of email to delete to read, but unfortunately, Microsoft Outlook doesn't support this command. That's okay though, because we have an alternative in the move all command. Let's delete this delete all command. Then, let's copy and paste the move all command from line 8. Make sure the new command on line 9 is selected. Then let's take a look at the options again. The session name is fine, but what about our destination folder? Technically, in Outlook, any items that get deleted are getting moved to the deleted items folder. So let's type deleted items into this field. For type of email, we can set it to red, because after the Save All Attachments command executes, those emails will be marked as red. We're still moving them from the inbox, so we can leave the From a Specific Folder option alone, but let's change the When Subject Contains field to match our report emails. We sent those out with a subject of Finance Report, so let's change that field to Finance Report. Now we've finished all 3 tasks and should be ready to run the bot. But before we do, let's make sure that we release A360's connection to our mailbox with the disconnect command. Just like the Excel basic close command, the email disconnect command severs the connection that A360 creates with your email inbox in the email connect command. Let's go to the Actions sidebar and drag the disconnect command from the email package to the end of our bot. This command only has the session name as an option, so we can leave that as is. Now, let's run our bot and see what happens. Now that we're back, let's check the results. We'll start by opening File Explorer and going to the CD20 folder. Inside, there should be the original files folder along with 10 report files numbered 1 through 10, which are the files we downloaded using the Save All Attachments command. Now let's go back to Outlook and see how we did there. The inbox should be empty, which it is. But let's click on the Archive folder. Inside, you should see 5 emails, all labeled as extension requested. Then, let's check our Deleted Items folder. Inside, we should see our 10 report files. Great! The bot worked, but let's put the files back into the inbox so I can show you one more thing. Click on the top Finance Report email, then hold down the Shift key and click on the last Finance Report email. This will select all of the emails so that we can drag them over to the inbox. Now, let's head back into the Archive folder and do the same thing with the extension requested emails. Select the top one, hold the Shift key, then select the last one and drag all 5 emails back into the inbox. Now, let's head back to the RPA workspace. Let's open up our Email Connect command on line 6. Like we saw earlier, the Connect To option allows us to choose Outlook, Email Server, and EWS Server. We used Outlook to connect to the default Outlook mailbox on our machine, but we might need to use a different email service like Gmail or our company's custom email server. Let's select the Email Server option and take a look at that. For this option, we need to provide some details about the mailbox we're trying to access. The first is the host, which is the URL or address of the email server. You can see just below that field it gives an example of what that might look like with Outlook. Let's actually type that into this field, outlook.office365.com. This is the host address to the Outlook email servers, but every email server will have an address in a similar format. If you're using one of the major email services, you should be able to Google the host address as well as the port number it uses, but if you're using a company server, you may have to ask your IT department. Anyway, now we need to give it a port number. Again, there are some examples below this field, and we're going to use one of them, so let's type 993 into the port field. Then, we need to give it a username and password. For these 2 fields, we have 3 options: credential, variable, and insecure string. Credential allows you to select a credential directly from A360's credential vault. Variable allows you to use an existing credential variable within your code, and insecure string lets us just type something in. I'll be going over credential variables and the credential vault in more detail in the Junior Developer Learning track, so let's select insecure string. For the username, we just need to type in the email address of the Outlook account we're using. So for me, I'm going to use the same email address that I set up at the beginning of this course. For the password field, we're again going to select insecure field, and we'll need to type in the password for that email address. As you can see, I'm blurring my password so I don't expose it to you. But the reason this field is called insecure string is that anyone who has access to your bot can view what you type in here. For that reason, it's important to be careful if you plan to use the insecure string field. Anyway, the next option is a checkbox that's labeled Use Secure Connection. If this box is checked, then any information you send to your mailbox and any information it sends back to you will be encrypted while it's moving through the internet. Since we're sending our password through the internet, I would definitely recommend checking this box. The last option is protocol, and this is basically the type of mailbox you're using. POP3 is significantly older than IMAP, so it's highly likely that your email uses IMAP. But if you select that option and it doesn't work, it means you either have a POP3 email account or that IMAP is disabled for your account. IMAP is usually only disabled if you work for a large company with security concerns, so you may need to have IMAP enabled by your data security team if it's not working. Outlook uses IMAP, so we'll leave that as is. One last thing. The email send command also has the option to send emails via email server. Let's open up our email send command on line 5 and take a quick look. If we head down to the bottom and change the send email via option from Outlook to email server, we'll get a few more options here. Like I mentioned earlier, each email server is different, but for Outlook, we can put our Outlook email address in the from address field, then we can use the suggestions below the host and port fields. We would then need to set both use secure connection and my server requires authentication to true, and put our username and passwords into the fields below. We won't actually do that here, but if I were to set up a send email command that way, I'd be able to send emails from my Outlook account without it being set up on the machine where the bot was running. Anyway, now that we have our connect command set up this way, let's run our bot one more time. Now, you'll receive a bot failure on line 9, but that's okay. It says that it couldn't find the deleted items folder, and that's because of the different way that we've connected to our inbox here. In this case, it's okay because I wanted to show you how to connect using the email server option, but it also illustrates the limitations of some of these email commands. In fact, when I work with RPA programs to come up with solutions on how to automate certain processes, I always strongly recommend keeping as much of the process out of email as possible. There are just too many nuances and points of failure for it to be effective, especially if you have an alternate way to retrieve data, like a shared drive folder or a website like SharePoint. And that's it. Now you know the basics of the email package, how to connect to and disconnect from a mailbox, how to save attachments, and how to move, delete, and send emails. Just remember that any command from the email package other than the send command should be a last resort. It can be slow, there are a lot of opportunities for failure, and many of the commands rely on whether an email is read or unread, which can change when someone else has access to the mailbox, so be careful. Hey everyone, thanks for watching. For more RPA training, check out the next video here, or watch everything in order right here. Subscribe to my channel for updates on new content, and become a patron to get access to personalized RPA support. But until next time, I'm Jordan at Afterburner Automation, and I hope this helps you build better bots.